Hey there, welcome back to the vlog. So in this vlog episode we're going to continue a series that was started, and I will link to the top right now for the beginning of this series, where we build the same application over and over using different technologies. So the first one we did was how to build something in Objective-C on iOS. Then we did the same app in Java on Android. Then we did the same app in C on Win32. And now we're going to do the same app, but this time on Android in Flutter. Before you get started, what you will need to do is install Android Studio, and you'll also need to go to flutter.io in order to get the instructions on how to configure your Android Studio to work with Flutter. And that would be in this Get Started area here. Once you have installed your Flutter extensions to your Android Studio, we can actually go over to Android Studio, and what you'll notice is this new option here that says Start a New Flutter Project. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that. So the first thing it's going to ask you is what type of Flutter project to create. So you have the Flutter application, which is a straightforward application. You've got the plugin, which is if you have libraries or things like that that you want to expose to Flutter. Let's say you've got an existing API or something like that that you want to expose to Flutter, then you would select the plugin, and then you've got packages for when you want to create widgets or other components to be used in other applications. So for this one we're going to use the Flutter application and hit next. So I'm going to call it my Flutter app. Just to be aware, there is a certain way that they like things done. There's lots of underscores and lowercase stuff. They don't like proper cased or sort of lower camel case or anything like that. So if I change this to have an uppercase A, you'll notice now that it's complaining about it. So yeah, just be aware of that. Where do you want it put? Project location, and also where is your Flutter? So you can, when you install Flutter, just make sure you remember where you installed it, because you will be referencing that quite often. And then a description. So hit next. You can put in your company name here. This really doesn't matter too much at this point because this is just a demonstration. But if it's going into the App Store, obviously you want to put a proper domain here. And I'm not going to bother checking these boxes off. We're just going to do everything in straightforward Dart and Flutter. Actually, just to quickly explain that, in the same way that in websites quite often you have HTML doing the front end and you have JavaScript doing the processing and under the hood stuff, in Flutter you have Flutter doing the front end, and then Dart is the language that is behind the scenes. So we're going to do everything in Dart. We're not going to worry about all this other platform stuff here. So I'm just going to hit finish. After a couple of seconds, the Android Studio will create your project. And this may take a little bit of time because it's not just creating the project, it's also dragging in a lot of the runtime that will be used within the Flutter project. One thing to remember is that whilst it does compile down to native code, there is a runtime engine. It's a couple of megabytes in size, and so whilst your application may at first seem very, very bloated, remember that it is shipping basically with the runtime engine for Dart embedded within the application. And you'll have to excuse it if you can hear my fans on my MacBook starting up, but yeah, this is an older machine, so it will make this noise. So to quickly run you through it, if you've ever done Android development before, this will be very, very familiar. You've got your application up here and you've got your external libraries area down here. So down here we basically just have everything that's needed to run Dart and Flutter. In the actual application area itself, what you have is your Android code goes here, your iOS specific code goes here. We will be working purely in this lib area, which is where the Flutter and Dart sort of cross-platform stuff lives. You have unit testing that goes in here. We're not going to worry about that. There's a couple of files to basically keep the project and Git and everything else in check. We then have these other folders which have more information about how the project is structured. The rest of it you pretty much won't deal with, other than this pubspec YAML. Now this is where the dependencies for the application are handled. If I just close down these other ones for a second. So you can see here we have my Flutter app, and there's the description. This all came from the wizard at the beginning. You can see the dependencies, so we've got the Flutter SDK as a dependency, and then also there's this Cupertino icons greater than version 0.10. That's for if you're doing cross-platform and you want to use iOS stuff that is native to iOS, or at least looks native to iOS in the material design, then that will be handled by that dependency. We then also have any other dependencies, so in this case Flutter test, and which is this test widget up here. Then we have, are we using material design? Yes, we are. And, any other styling stuff that we want to add down below, we can. So if we want to ship fonts and things like that, we can. It's a good idea every now and then just to hit the Flutter Upgrade button. And what that will do is it will go out and grab the latest version of Flutter. It will update your engine. And then afterwards it will run this Flutter Doctor, which you can also run manually by tapping this link here. And as you can see down below, it's then basically said, right, okay, no, we've checked Flutter, that's all good. We've checked the Android toolchain, that's good. We've checked the iOS toolchain, that's good. We're on a good version of Visual Studio. We've got VS Code installed if we want to use that. And, there's no devices connected, but that's not going to be a problem right now. We're going to use the simulator for this one. So I'm going to close this down. And I'm going to open up main.dart. Now, when you start an application, the first thing it gives you is a basic default application. And I'm going to quickly just run this up and go through this code with you. So let's just do this. Okay, so once the emulator is up and running, I am now going to select that emulator and debug. What you will now see is down here, it will start to compile the application and it will run it in the emulator. Now, the default application that it gives you when you first create a new one, it's actually worth reading through the comments because it does explain a lot about what's going on within the app. And in this particular app that they give you, you basically have a button that when you press it over and over and over, it just increments a number and displays that number in the application. So let's just let it quickly compile. And as it installs onto the device, you'll notice the basic framework starting to appear. Okay, here we go. So this is the basic application, and what they've done is they've got a button down here. When you press it, it just increments this number. There's nothing fancy about it, but it does at least show you a couple of key concepts. So the first key concept is that you have your framework. So there's a scaffolding which takes care of the top here and also gives you a main area that you can put the rest of your application on. And it also explains how widgets work and how state works. So obviously there is a state because every time we press this button, something is being incremented in the background and it's being reflected on this user interface. So that's where the stateful stuff comes in. There are two types of widgets. There are stateful widgets that have basically a concept of persistent data, and there are stateless widgets. So there's a stateless widget where you might have, for instance, a string that's being displayed and it's just done once and that's it. And you might have, for instance, a string that is being displayed that changes based on some data, where that would be a stateful widget. So, what we've got here is a stateful widget that, when I press this button, it's incrementing that counter. Now, one of the highlights of Flutter is that you're supposed to be able to change things in the layout and very, very quickly see that update in the application without you having to recompile the entire application. I do see this work sometimes. More often than not, it doesn't work for me. But then again, I generally don't make small little changes in the UI. I'm normally doing big changes under the hood. So let's say we wanted to change this text from "you have pushed the button this many times." You could change, let's say, "you have pushed this button." And now there is a hot reload, which is this lightning icon. Oh, there it goes. Right, so it just changed it, and that was a hot reload. But they say it takes a couple of milliseconds. Yeah, according to this, it was nearly 4 seconds, which is still infinitely faster than the traditional way of doing things where you had to compile the entire application. But I think sometimes the expectation has to be dialed back a little bit, especially on an older computer like I'm using right now. So what I'm now going to do is basically tear out all of this code, and I'm going to lay it out slightly differently to make it make a little bit more sense, and we're going to build it up from the ground up to build the app that we actually want. So I'm going to hit stop. So the code that we're dealing with is all in this main.dart, and actually I'm just going to get rid of this, we don't need this here. Okay, so everything gone. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import this package. This package is basically all of the material design, user interface stuff that is required for Flutter. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing to really say about this. Now I am also going to just move over to this Dart analysis, because this actually tells you a lot of what's going on. It's trying to pre-compile the app as we're building it. It's looking at it, it's examining it, and it will give us a lot of hints about what needs to be dealt with when we go to start doing recompiling. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of this test area. Like, this is just going to confuse things for the moment, so I'm just going to delete. Yep, gone. Alright, that takes care of some of these errors that just disappeared. In almost every application there is a starting point called main, and in the case of Flutter and Dart it's still the same. So we're going to just put this in, and what this does, again, like almost every other platform, void main, arguments coming in, and the code literally just says run app, and it's a name of a widget. In this case it's called my app. Now my app obviously doesn't exist right now because we haven't typed that code in, so as you can see here it's actually complaining saying, hey, that doesn't exist. So what we're now going to do is we're just going to put in this class. Now as you can see we've got class my app, and it is basically deriving from a stateless widget. The app itself does not need, in our case, to have any state. We just run it and it just boots from cold every time. We're not too worried about anything else. Now what we are going to do is we're going to override the build method of the widget, and this will return the widget, and it takes the build context of the app that's running right now in order to run this. So that's what that parameter is there. And what we're going to do is we're going to return a new material, oops, I can't spell, material app. And this material app will have parameters. So we will have a title, and that title will be my wonderful app. And this app, as well as having a title, it will have a home widget which will be displayed that makes up the basis of the rest of the app. So we're going to say home, and this will be a new home page, page widget. Home page widget. Okay. Now what you'll notice is that it's already started adding these ending things here. So what often happens in Dart and Flutter is every time you have an indentation, like here for instance we've got an indentation for material app and everything's indented, when it outdents again it will say, okay, that was material app that you were in. This comes in pretty handy actually when you've got widgets inside of widgets inside of widgets inside of widgets, like knowing which widget you are in or coming out of. This is actually one of those features that at first I thought is a bit superfluous. I ended up relying on it. It really is a very handy feature. So what I'm also going to do is terminate this off with a semicolon, and we are now done as far as that widget is concerned. Now here we actually said that the home was going to be a home page widget. Well, this doesn't exist yet, so let's create that. So we're going to go class home page widget extends, and this will be a stateful widget. I can't spell. Stateful widget. And again we're going to do an override. And what we're going to do is we're going to create this variable called underscore home page widget. And just so you know, in Dart, underscores are used to define a local member variable. So this is a local member variable called home page widget state, and we're going to call this create state on a new homepage widget state. Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing at this point. So let me just create this here. Right, okay. So now we've got this, underscore homepage widget state, which extends the state of the homepage widget. So to recap, main starts my app starts a new material app, which has a home widget called homepage widget. That class extends a stateful widget, so we override the state, and this is now the stateful widget that we are building. Hope that makes sense so far. So naturally, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to override the build event within this widget. So every time this widget is built, the code that is in here will run. This build, the first thing it will do is it will return a new scaffold. If you go back to the video that I did the other day on material design, you'll remember that the first thing we started basically with was the scaffold. And so this is what we are returning here. Now, what's inside the scaffold? We're going to have a new app bar, and we're going to have a body, which is a container. What's inside this new container? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some padding in there. So the next thing we're going to do now is put in a child widget, and it's going to be a center. So let me just put this in here. So that there and that there. You may remember before in the previous video I said like there's going to be children inside of children inside of children. This is where it starts to really build out, and this what I was saying earlier about how they close out the comments on the end of braces and things. You can see how this is going to start to really give us an idea of where we are in our braces, because you do end up with a lot of them in Flutter. So the child of our new center is going to be a new column. Whoops. So our column is going to have an array of children widgets. Close that off. Right, okay, so now we've got our children widget. So I've just quickly expanded this out because we will spend all day otherwise just building children inside the children, but I do want to run you through it. So we've got our scaffold that has a body which has a container. It has a child which is a center widget, which basically center justifies all of the children controls. Inside that we have a column, and then that column has an array of children, and we've got these expanded widgets, so there's 3 of them in total. And then each one of those then has a child, which in this case is another column. We have an alignment. That column has children, which has a container, which has padding, which has children, of which one is a text field. And inside that text field, we have the decoration and the hint text to type something. And there's also this controller. Now, we haven't added this controller yet. We're going to do that in a minute. The next expanded area has a child with a column. It has a children with a container that has padding, and another child with a button. That button has a set state, that button has an on-pressed event which calls set state, and set state is one of those, it's almost like a repaint event for widgets. So you can change all of your variables, and the minute you say set state, it will trigger the refresh of that variable on the screen. This is where that stateful versus stateless widget comes in. And in this particular example, you can see that our label text is going to be equal to whatever our controller text is. Now, neither the label or the controller exist yet. Then we have a child on that button, which has text that says OK. And then we close off the raise button, close off the container, close off the column, close off the expanded. Then down here, we've got another expanded widget with a child column, and that child column has children, of which there is a container in there, and that container has a child with some text which says label text. And then we close off the container, the column, the expanded widget, the widget children, the column, the center, the container, and the scaffold. So at that point all the user interface is built. However, the underlying code which is holding these values and variables, that's not there yet, so we're going to add that now. So I'm going to go back up to the top of this, and just here, I'm going to paste these 2 lines in. So the first line is this text editing controller. The user interface is very much disconnected from the underlying code. And so this input controller, or underscore input controller, is our method instance of a text editing controller, which basically when we were down here creating this text field, we said the controller is going to be underscore input controller, which is this variable here. So anything that goes on in the user interface down there will be reflected in this variable we can access up here. The same thing then happens where we've got this string label text, which is then used later when we hit the button. We call setState. We take whatever the controller text is, put it into this variable, and then later that variable is supplied as the text to the label when it gets further on down. So now I'm going to run this up and you should see how this works. Okay, so as we can see, the basic framework is loading. Okay, so here is now our app. And if you're wondering what this little sash is in the corner that says debug, it's because I'm using the debug version of the app. If you actually compile the release version, that goes away and things work infinitely faster. So we're going to type something. Let's say we type test. Now, if I hit OK, we can see here's our word test. If I go back up here and change it to test, we can see it works. So this is exactly the same as the app that we built on iOS previously, then Android, then Win32. Now it's using Flutter. What I will say is that whilst this is relatively easy to use, I have tried to do now two production level apps using Flutter. I ran into two problems which caused me both times to abandon it. Now, Flutter is still very much in beta. There are still pieces of functionality being added to it. I've got high hopes for Flutter. I think it's going to do very, very well. However, when I tried to do Bluetooth, that was a bit of a miss. I also tried to do push notifications and found that that couldn't be done either. However, it is really, really good for text processing. It's very, very good for building easy to use user interfaces, doing basic calculations. Like it's a very new platform, and there is a lot still to be added to it. I fully expect it to grow considerably in the very near future. As I'm recording this, it's near the end of April of 2018. The bulk of the language is in place on the Dart side. It literally is the underpinnings and things that allow you to tie Flutter into a native experience. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to build an application and have a server send out a ping notification while you're not running the app. I could do that under iOS pretty easily, but I can't see how you do it under Flutter. And that's just one example. As I said, I was trying to do some Bluetooth stuff with it just to see how far I could push it, and that also turned into a bit of a hair-raising problem. There ended up being two external Bluetooth libraries that I looked at, and neither of them really fit properly what I was trying to do at the time. So both of those are still very much under development. So again, I have high hopes that things are going to get ironed out and this is going to be a really, really good platform. I really feel that it's going to give people the ability to write cross-platform applications that actually run natively and that don't have all of the problems that come with, for instance, Censure or Cordova or any of those other platforms. I think this time round Google is actually trying to address those shortcomings on the other platforms. So I really think this will work out. But yeah, so that is it for this one. As with all of the other demonstrations that I've done, I've tried to keep this very, very high level. The idea is that if you are a programmer, then you will understand what it is that I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to give you like, okay, this is how it's done, but please go ahead and read the manual yourself. Any questions, please leave them below, and yeah, I'm going to leave it here. If you like these videos, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like them, thumbs down. If you want to see more, please hit subscribe, and speak to you soon. Thanks. Bye.